Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today we have a great guest. I'm so excited about introducing you to my friend Chris Pugh. He's a local pharmacist. He is a native of Ponchatoula. His family's been here for 100 plus years, I think. Very prominent in the community. They have been business owners, politicians, police officers, you name it. Everybody knows and likes the Pugh family. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I want to mention before we bring Chris out that we have the ability to respond to your comments. So if you're watching this live on Facebook, leave us a comment down below. You can ask Chris a question. You can ask me a question. You can make a comment, let your friend know that you're here, whatever you like, but we will do our very best to respond to that as you live during the show, as you leave your comments. So with no further ado, I bring out our guest, Chris Pugh. Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Parker.
Thank you for making time. I know you're busy. You're a dad. You're a professional, and you've got a baby on the way. So I know time's limited, and we appreciate it. Why don't we begin the show, but with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm native of Ponchatoula, as you mentioned, born and raised here. I went to Holy Ghost for most of my childhood education up until junior high. I attended Ponchatoula High, graduated in the class of 2007, and then from there attended University of ULM or University of Louisiana at Monroe for 2 years, and then was accepted to Xavier University College of Pharmacy and pursued my college pharmacy career there. Graduated there and opened the Walmart in Ponchatoula as soon as it opened. Became a pharmacist there, and recently,
oh wow! So you were the pharmacist there on day one. That's exciting.
It was really close. I think they opened in April, and I was licensed in July. So yeah, right there as soon as it opened.
Yeah.
And then my partner Donnie Williams and I were there at Walmart, and then recently, as pretty much August 1st, I decided to break out on my own and open my own pharmacy, Cypress Pointe Pharmacy, right here in the Hammond Ponchatoula area.
So exciting. I was so glad to hear that. We can't wait to ask you all about Cypress Pointe Pharmacy. I know you're going to do great things. And as a small business owner, my heart goes out to you. I know those first days are scary as you're getting it up and going, and it's uncertain. But I can tell you from the outside looking in, there's no doubt that you guys will thrive, and I think you're already doing it because you're such a great guy. I mean, you did all those, you just mentioned, you went to all these great schools. You always had good grades, you were in demand. That's how you got the, Walmart job in the first place. And you guys are just going to kill it out there, man. So congrats on that. We've got, we already have a comment here. I mentioned, folks, if you have a comment, please use it. So you just got your first congratulations of the show there, Chris. Well, that's you did a great job of giving me lots of markers there of your life so far to talk about. So why don't we kind of go back, unpack that a bit? So you mentioned you went to Holy Ghost, great school, but I got to say, as a St. Joseph Crusader, blood rival. I remember playing you guys, I remember sitting on the bench when my friends played you guys in the basketball championship my eighth grade year. What was it like, heading up to Holy Ghost? So I'd imagine most of your buddies in Ponchatoula were down here in these schools. Did they pick on you? What was life like being a Ponchatoula
boy?
Funny
story is it was as much of a family divided as I can imagine. So my dad was a St. Joseph Crusader. My uncle Buddy has coached girls and boys basketball for years at St. Joseph.
He's a St. Joseph legend. Yeah,
correct.
He was the coach forever.
My mom's sister is a legend at Holy Ghost. Teacher Susan Ziwi. So she was a religion teacher there and was currently teaching, and that's kind of where my family decided to send us, I guess, because she was there. They own the florist. And when you own a florist, you always get the call, whether it be, unfortunately, a funeral, wedding, or something pops up randomly. So you have to have some childcare or someone to bring your kids home. So a lot of times we had delivery guys picking us up, or you never knew who was going to pick up the two boys. It was just, or when
it's
they were
a lot like being a
up.
Sheriff's kid. I remember many a day I was expecting Dad to pick me up from school, and some deputy would pull up and say, Mom and Dad aren't here, so it's, that rings a bell.
That brought us to Holy Ghost, and we played sports there. But then we were always playing in the Ponchatoula Youth Rec Leagues. That was kind of our, probably the greatest of my childhood memories was J.C. Park. Maybe in the tennis court more than the field, but J.C. Park Community Center, your basketball games there, between there, the junior high, everywhere. So we had a good group of friends from Ponchatoula and
Yeah.
Hammond, so that always helped, growing
Very
up.
cool.
So.
Well, I can relate to that family struggle because I remember when Bree's kids went to Holy Ghost at first. We all gave them a really hard time, and some finished Holy Ghost, some transferred to St. Joseph, and but it's you're right. When your family's been around one school for literally generations, it's a big deal.
Right.
But they're both great schools. That's exciting.
Blessed to have both, but yeah. So that's where we started, and then attended Ponchatoula High.
Were there many kids from Ponchatoula that went with you to Holy Ghost when you were there, or were you kind of a lone ranger?
Yeah, kind of a lone ranger. There was maybe 2 or 3 other families, and we were all about the same age, so it did work out.
Gotcha.
But yeah, for the most part, it was you played sports with one group here,
right?
And then you maybe played basketball for Holy Ghost, but then you played for Ponchatoula Rec League, so you were teammates with some kids from St. Joseph. And then opponents another week. So,
and that's not that different from the St. Joseph experience. Ponchatoula, the school system's really big. The high school has like 2,000 people in it.
Right.
But when I was at St. Joe, our class had like 24 kids. So you had the same 8 girls, 16 boys for 9 years in a row. And I know the school's a bit bigger now. But, my point here is that your experience of making Ponchatoula friends through the youth sports leagues, J.C. Park back in our day.
Right.
Now it would be out at Pard on Hoover Road. That's really where you kind of met the rest of the town in large part because your school itself was really small. So who were your coaches? You mentioned your Uncle Buddy, the legendary basketball coach that he is. Who were your coaches coming up? I mean, whether rec league or school or whatever.
Yeah, Uncle Buddy, my dad and my Uncle Buddy, he's going to kill me for this, but there's a bigger age gap between the two. So by the time I came along,
there's an even bigger height gap than age gap. Your dad's more like me, doesn't look like a basketball player, but Mr. Buddy, he's an epitome of a basketball player. But we won't tell your age, Mr. Buddy. If you're watching, you're a handsome young man, just a wee bit older than baby
twilight
brother Steve.
Years. He's in his twilight years of coaching, so he hung it up by the time I came around.
Okay.
But some of the other coaches were really just local parents. Mike DuPont,
great guy.
He was one of the big time coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Harrison. Brandon Starkey.
I love Ben. His mom was my 3rd grade teacher.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Starkey's a great family, been around forever.
Yeah. So just a lot of local guys, just coaching some of their kids, and some were just parents helping out, or community leaders helping out. So yeah, I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of names, but a lot of those were just.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning a few because you're right. That is, our sports leagues are basically run by just good parents and a few other good-hearted people, stepping up to do the work that needs to be done. Whether it's the youth basketball league or Dixie Youth Baseball or Little Conference football, you name it. These aren't folks getting paid, right? They're just out there volunteering and serving the community. And sometimes they're folks like your Uncle Buddy that really know the sport and were great players who went on to be great coaches. But a lot of times it's folks like me. It's just a dad with a barely a scrap of athletic ability, period, who just wants to see the kids kind of, have folks there to encourage them. Yeah. And that's important. What sports did you play? Baseball, football, basketball?
Growing up, I played baseball, basketball, football. Actually, my first football coach was one of your recent people you just interviewed, Sharon Brown Carter. Her husband, Demetrius. My first football coach. Yeah. He was tough on me, man.
Demetrius is a stern man, but I got to tell you, if you knew Demetrius in his playing days as I did, he was a beast. He was a running back.
He kept that intensity. But he and Coach Ronnie Henderson and Coach Eldred Palmer, we were the regulators.
Yeah. The regulators. Cool. That's cool that you could still remember the name. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I had fun times on those little conference fields, man. And I look back and, Joey Berthelot was my first coach, and he just, was such a great guy. He taught us a ton. And, eventually I became just a bench warmer. I carried my good buddy Chad Richard's clipboard, and he was the starting quarterback, and I was his backup. It was just fun to be part of the team. And it was the Gilco Trojans. We had the Gill brothers, Skipper and Butch Gill were our coaches, and it's so much fun, man. I'm glad you bring up those memories. Yeah. Well, you mentioned you went from Holy Ghost to PHS. Why don't we talk about those years and the people, that you met as you went there?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Sure. I can't say enough about the education I received and the experience that I received at Ponchatoula High. I'm a big fan. Now that I'm an alum, it's even better to kind of give back, and we'll talk about it maybe a little bit later, but that's one of the reasons of going out and developing and investing in a small business is to give back to that community that's kind of paved the way for you forward. But ever since I walked in the doors of Ponchatoula High, I was one of those kids. I enjoyed going to school because if I didn't, my mom was going to put me to work, and school was much easier than working for my mom. I can guarantee it. But
right.
But I mean, we had a great group of friends. It was a sheltered community to a sense, but it allowed you to grow at the same time. So, and going through some of the coaches we had, we were never very great at sports at the time. It's a lot has changed since then in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Well, there's some great things. Speaking of the Lady Wave right now, chasing the state championship, there's a lot special happening at Ponchatoula High now.
Right. But just that whole experience of being with your friends and your buddies, all the parents at the time, I didn't appreciate it. Now that I'm a parent, I really appreciate parents knowing each other, being able to call and check on kids. But growing up, we had a group of friends that everybody's parents could correct everybody's kids. And that was one of those things that I think is really special about Ponchatoula in general. Just the community kind of wraps your arms around you, and you're never alone. But, somebody's always watching what you do, good or bad. So that's always a benefit.
Great point. And it takes a village, and that's what makes Ponchatoula so special.
I agree.
You're right. You can kind of be in any corner of town, and, fortunately, people are looking out for you. And that's not true everywhere you go.
Exactly. So, I had great teachers and coaches. Coach Steve Grigas with Coach Mate.
Yeah, and, Coach Grigas. And, he's a great teacher, too. So many folks don't know that. I mean, he had such a storied career as a player at Southeastern, where he played basketball and baseball, I believe. And, of course, as a coach, football, basketball, golf, baseball, you name it. He's coached it all. But I got to tell you, he's one of the best history teachers you'll ever find. He makes every class interesting. Just a super talented guy. I'm glad you mentioned Coach Grigas.
And there's another coach that may not get a lot of credit, but he was only there for a short time when I was in my early days in baseball at Ponchatoula High, and his name is Matt McCullough. And he was a young guy. He came straight from Southeastern, kind of started his coaching career with us. Coached maybe 3 years baseball, Ponchatoula High, and went on. And now I think he's won 2 state championships in baseball, and now he's the head coach at Acadiana football, who's a powerhouse.
Oh, wow.
But just got to start right here at Ponchatoula,
very
2005. Cool. So he's some guy, a guy that I definitely remember and enjoyed being around.
Well, I know, and as being the brother of a coach, I'm sure now as an adult with a brother who's molding careers and lives that way, you see the importance of those roles, right? And you're able to reflect. It's interesting to hear you mention that you can just be there a few years. Last week we had a young educator on the show, Marshall Muse III, and he's just in his first year of education, and he's already shaping lives. It doesn't take long to make a big impact, and that's a cool point. Well, let me ask you about the first day. So I remember the intimidation I felt the first day I stepped on the campus at PHS, because again I mentioned I came from St. Joe. There weren't that many of us. And they divide you up. You go from a class of 24 to well over 10 times as many kids. But coming from Holy Ghost, where there are maybe just a few, what was that like? Were you nervous, or were you just go in there knowing you had it? I mean, what was that like?
So the blessing and the curse is when you have an older brother who's at the high school with you. So
that's true. Yeah,
it's a blessing because a couple people, but it's a curse because they're just ready to send you in the wrong direction or where. So the first day I got my schedule, and I had a class at the time that had some trailers in the back of the school, and I had no idea where I was going. So they gave me a hard time, but they guided me. And from there, I remember going to athletic PE, which I'm assuming it's the same way now. That's every grade's together. So I mean, I go. As a freshman, I walk in.
It was like that in the 90s when I was there too.
And you go with these big seniors, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, am I ever going to get that big?" And just those thoughts. But that was the good thing about Ponchatoula. You develop relationships with guys, 10 years older than you and 10 years younger than you. So it's all kind of a community involvement when it comes to sports or just friendship or And now I even we've played on community softball leagues with guys that graduated 12 years or 15 years above us and guys that are 10 years under us. So it's all kind of a wash. But that Ponchatoula bond is something that really does stick,
Yeah. That's so cool. Well, speaking of the Ponchatoula Bond, I want to bring up a few more comments here because you're getting some love here on the
Oh Lord.
So I don't know if you can see this on your screen. I see you're looking at a computer, Chris, where you can see it. But if not, let me know and we can identify them. But Rachel, thank you for she's sending love from the Stromeyers.
Thank you.
I just mentioned Marshall, not knowing he had comment here, but he says hello. And we've got, this must be an in-law here.
Yeah,
Khaki.
that's when I get nervous, when the in-laws start to
That's a great sign, man. When the in-laws are, they're making sure you're minding your P's and Q's, but they're sending you love, so that's good. And your beautiful mother-in-law, I see her. I'm gonna go ahead and read this one because this is important. A mother-in-law to say you're awesome, smart, caring, responsible, and of course, handsome. Wow, she says you care about your customers. Well, I don't know many folks that could get that kind of review from anyone, much less a mother-in-law. Way to go, Miss Julie.
I appreciate it.
I'm wondering, did Alyssa steal her mom's computer and type that in for you?
Alyssa would not be that nice.
She would be keeping it real. We'd
see
something
something say,
different.
Hurry up. You got bad time to take care of later.
Right. Oh, and speaking of in-laws, your sister-in-law throwing some love out your way.
Appreciate it. Thank
wow. That's really cool. And we were talking about your brother. He's watching. That's good to know. Stephen, I'd like to get you on the show. Of course, we'll talk baseball, coaching, all that, but you can tell us about how you bullied Chris a little bit coming up. One big brother to the other. Those would be some fun stories to share. Our mutual good friend, Megan Kelly, says you're a good guy, and she loves being friends with your family. Dr. Tony Licciardi, look at this. Nice to see the Pugh boys grow up into gentlemen. Wow. Yan Bourgeois says Ponchatoula is a great place to live. We certainly agree with that.
Agreed.
Tristan Kaysen, how are you? Thank you for tuning into the show. John Fisher. So this is a buddy of mine all the way up in Kingston, New York. So you've got eyes on you from all over the place. And look at that. Your dad, what a great photo of the three of you, the handsome Pugh men there in your tuxedos and suits. That's great. Steve Pugh, your dad, the longtime state representative, a true legend in this area. Always been one of my heroes. Your brother Steven says there's not many stories about that. So you got big. So this happened in the Layrisson family too. Everybody knows that Bree's obviously much taller, more muscular than I am now. But he was bigger than me at a young age and could kind of handle me. We were about 2 years apart. What's the age difference, Chris, between you and Steven?
2 years, exactly.
Oh, so and now I have two boys 2 years apart. And of course, you're about to have roughly 2 years apart, or 2 to 3 years apart. That's a tough age because you got to, watch out, make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew. My dad always says he figured out that I was the smart one when I stopped fighting Bree. He said when I was bigger and could beat Bree up, Bree just came back for more and more. But once Bree started whipping on me pretty good, I decided to become friends.
Steven still has some learning to do.
Yeah, that's when he figured out who had the brains and brawn. Steven, different story maybe. Emily McIntyre, thank you for tuning in and saying that we're awesome guys. We really appreciate that. Folks, as I said earlier, we're going to do our best to get to your comments. So if you're watching live here, holler at us. Feel free to ask a question. I'm here with Chris Pugh. We're going to eventually get to talking about his pharmacy, this small business, this great pharmacy that he started, Cypress Pointe Pharmacy, right at the Cypress Pointe Hospital, right there in Hammond, right near Ponchatoula. But right now we're still talking about the good old days and Ponchatoula High School. We're talking about Coach Grigas and these other folks, other coaches, that made an impact on him. What about the classroom part of PHS, Chris? Any teachers come to mind that really helped you? Obviously, you went on to be a super successful scientist, right? Did that start at Holy Ghost, at PHS, college, beyond? Or
I'd love to tell you some great story. But truth of the matter is I was a junior in high school and my mom was pressing me. She was, you really need to start looking at what you're going to do with your life, that whole conversation. So as every 17-year-old who knows it all, I just Googled it, best profession. And it was the first one that popped up. And I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pharmacist. And I thought I got away with it. And the next week she said, I'm so glad you're picking pharmacy because Ponchatoula High is offering a pharmacy tech course at the high school next year. And I was supposed to get off after 4 hours, a half a day. And she said, you're going to take that course. So eventually, Julie Kipper, it was the first year they taught it. And Julie Kipper taught it. And from there on, I just kind of took an interest and it just took off from there. But I did want to
So it
mention.
started with kind of a George Costanza, Art Vandelay, I'm going to be an architect type of just give mom an answer so she'll leave me alone type of deal.
And
that's cool.
The cool thing about the course at Ponchatoula High, and I think they've gone more into this, which I'm a big fan of, not that I'm in education, but it allowed me not only to learn in the classroom, but you had to shadow a pharmacy for so many hours. Cool. I think it was 50 hours. And I was put at, well, I think it was maybe just turned CVS, or maybe it was still Eckert's, right there by Rouse's or Winn-Dixie.
Sure, yeah.
And I went in and met the pharmacy staff, and from then I kind of took an interest and a liking, and from there it just kind of stuck. And I said, this is what I'm going to do, and just
very cool. Yeah,
I was blessed enough to have some and to meet people that have been along in the journey and kind of guide you along that way was something that was great.
So in all likelihood, if PHS doesn't offer that program and you don't do that and then go work in a local pharmacy, who knows where you'd be today? I mean, you might be somebody like me with a liberal arts grad that forces you to go to law school or something.
A possibility, but
who knows how you could have ruined your life in another way? That's a cool story, man.
And the pharmacy thing is just one avenue. I know they teach different courses now with welding. I wasn't that talented, but just kind of giving students a chance to develop their skills that may not be 100% classroom sufficient, and kind of guide them in that route. I think is something that Ponchatoula has really grown in that capacity and is able to offer.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that practical education is so important. And you tell one version of the story, which is I did this, I liked it, and I went on to this great career of success in that profession. But I think at least equally important is the opportunity to go see a career and determine you don't like it. Because when I talk to young people all the time that want to become attorneys, they're faced with this decision of spending a ton of money to possibly go to law school after 4 years of college. And, everybody knows about the student debt crisis and all that's baked into that. But the reality is they don't know what the job's like until it's too late, right? If they had that opportunity to go work in a law firm, work in a court system, whatever, I think a lot of people might take a pass on it, because you mentioned earlier, I think that you read somewhere that pharmacist was the best career ever or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I actually had a classmate who was a former pharmacist, came and joined us in law school, went through 3 years of law school with me, graduated, but he ended up going back to his career in pharmacy because it was, I don't know if it's the best career in the world, but at least according to him, it's better than being an attorney. But man, that guy spent so much time and money on, a career that wasn't a good fit. And I think you can avoid that by doing things like you mentioned, getting folks into the workforce, into the profession with some guidance, some practical education. You're making a great point there, man. I'm so glad you shared that.
Appreciate it.
So from there, you mentioned you go to school in Monroe after PHS. Correct. Is that right?
Just a little background. There's 2 pharmacy schools in the state of Louisiana.
Okay.
The University of Louisiana at Monroe, and you have Xavier University. So with TOPS and everything, I went up to ULM, and I had a slight dream of maybe walking on the football team, and that ended day one. I just saw the size of the guys, and I said, there's no way. And,
so what position did you play in high school in football?
So it kind of moved around a little bit, from safety to a receiver, a little tight end here or there. So the funny thing about Ponchatoula, when I was going to school there, and for most sports, I think most of us would agree, but maybe even when you were going to school there, it was funny because maybe when you go to college, you have conversations with guys and you always say like, well, we played against this really good athlete. For example, it's like, well, we played against Matt Forte in high school and now he's an NFL superstar. And now it's kind of changed tunes to where younger guys that recently graduated from Ponchatoula High, even in the last 8 to 10 years, can say, I played with that guy who went on to play on Saturdays. And I just think
that's a great point. What a huge shift.
Something, yeah, really neat. But I went up there to ULM and with the hopes of going to pharmacy school, and they changed the pharmacy curriculum a little bit and made it 3 years of undergrad as opposed to the 2 years of undergrad. And in 2 years, I was accepted to Xavier and ended up pursuing pharmacy school there and enjoyed my experience there as well. And then moved back here in 2014.
So I'm glad you're talking about the education process for pharmacists, because I think this is a mystery to a lot of us. We grow up with a pharmacist in our life, and if we're in a place like Ponchatoula, that person's a really big deal. For me, I think of my childhood, Mr. Tom Jackson was just a really big deal. Jackson's Pharmacy right there in Ponchatoula, across from what's now CVS. And, whether it's him or, David Osborne in the next generation, now it's you, Chris, right? But we don't really know much about that background, that education. I mean, you are Dr. Christopher Pugh. You have a PharmD, doctorate of pharmacy, right? So you're studying pharmacy at the undergraduate level, which is what you've been telling us about. And then you'll do it at the graduate level to get your doctoral degree. Tell us about how that works. You mentioned something about it going from 2 to 3 years. Just kind of break down for those of us that know nothing about pharmacy education. What's that process to become a pharmacist? In case we have some young Chris Pugh who's thinking about it because they read about it being the best career ever.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to stop by Cypress Pointe. I love talking to young students. I've done a couple of talks at Ponchatoula High on career days, things like that. But bottom line is it starts with 2 to 3 years of jam-packed 15 to 18-hour semesters of undergrad where you do your anatomies, chemistries, things like that. And from there, you apply to pharmacy school, and then you do take a standardized test in most universities called the PCAT, which is more science-based, like an ACT, but more science-based. And then from there, you are granted an interview, and based on your interview, you learn if you're accepted. And then once accepted, you have 4 years of pharmacy school, 8 semesters.
Okay. Wow.
3 years are in the classroom, and your last year, and it differs by university, but for the most part, it's 7 6-week rotations where you have to do a rotation in different clinical settings, such as hospital, ambulatory care, retail, community. So the good thing about Xavier was I was able to do most of my rotations in this area, in the Ponchatoula area. Between North Oaks, I was able to do a couple other retail or independent pharmacy spots. So that gave me some experience. When you finish pharmacy school, you graduate before taking your boards. Then you take your boards. Well, once you pass your boards, you have the ability to practice in any setting. And you had the option to possibly do a residency to continue your education, to teach in schools or to have different jobs in hospital settings or research development teams. So that is another avenue. I chose to, take my boards pass and go into the retail side of things. I enjoy the community involvement as opposed to the hospital side of things. But there's a place for all pharmacists. So
right. And it sounds like from the beginning of the interview, you went straight into, the big corporate world at Walmart. Is that right? Was that your first job as a licensed pharmacist?
Correct. And truth be told, in the state of Louisiana, you have to be a pharmacist, a practicing pharmacist for 2 years before you can be a pharmacy manager, which basically allows you to gain that experience before legally opening your own pharmacy. You could work under somebody in an independent pharmacy, but you have to have that 2 years of experience. So I had a few different offers from different places, but I just felt the calling to come back home. I felt like it was a good opportunity to kind of get in on the ground floor. I had worked with my partner, Donnie Williams, in the past, and we knew each other, had a great relationship, and we were able to come in and enjoy some time in the retail setting and kind of get my feet wet, get experienced. And I knew that I would love to go to the independent side of things. I just didn't know when that opportunity would come, and it presented itself, and here we are now.
Yeah, so exciting. Well, you mentioned, I think your words were, you felt a calling to come back to Ponchatoula. Tell us about that. How did you know? Was it obvious? Did you have to do some soul searching? But how did you know? When did you know? And tell us about that calling to come back. Because for a guy with your credentials, you could go anywhere in the world. You could work, somewhere fancy and beautiful on the Pacific Coast or whatever. How'd you know you wanted to come right back here to Ponchatoula? And why?
Well, it's one of those things you don't really know what you have until you miss it. And I went to ULM, and Monroe is kind of similar to Ponchatoula. It's kind of like going to Southeastern if you're not from Hammond. So you get to experience everything. It is a smaller town setting. And then coming back, just kept coming back. When I moved to, I guess, a bigger city of New Orleans, I was able to experience that. And it just wasn't, it wasn't that home feeling. It was great to visit. I do enjoy, my wife and I go to New Orleans to go eat frequently.
Yeah,
but
we do too.
It's not somewhere that you want to raise your family. In my opinion, it's not the same as Ponchatoula. Now, my wife is from Mandeville area, and we met while she was at Southeastern.
Yeah, tell us about Alyssa. We want to know about that love story. The beautiful Alyssa Pugh, wonderful woman. Tell us about her, beginning with how y'all met.
Sure. Yeah. My wife and I, so we met, it was actually through a mutual friend. It was my college roommate's little sister was in her sorority.
Okay.
And I saw Alyssa, and I said I'd like to get to know her, but I'm a little passive sometimes. So
Yeah.
I asked my roommate's little sister. I said, give me the scoop on her. And she said, oh, she's a great girl. I said, well, introduce us. And from there, we exchanged phone numbers. And maybe the third day we decided to hang out. She was living in the dorm at Southeastern. So we go, and it was a beautiful day. And I said, she's like, you want to go throw the softball? And I'm like, yeah, this is perfect for me. So we go out there, I bring my glove, and I'm just throwing her
Sounds like she did a little scouting. She knew she was dealing with an athlete.
I guess. So I'm throwing like little pop-ups to her, and she's like zinging the ball back to me. And finally she asked me, she said, do you mind? I used to pitch in high school. Do you mind if I pitch a little? And I said, no problem. I can catch her. I've caught bullpens in high school. No big deal. So I get down to catch her, and the first three, she's throwing underhand. And I mean, she's zinging them in there. I'm like, oh man. She goes, do you mind if I throw a curveball? I said, nothing I can't handle. I can't say no at this point. Well, she throws a curveball. It breaks. It's a perfect strike. I completely miss it. It hits me in the ankle. My ankle swells up. I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
Maybe the next week I go to her house, and there's all these pictures of her being this high school great pitcher. And I'm just like, oh man.
So you've got star pitchers in every direction. You got the brother.
I am the least athletic in the entire family. Guaranteed.
Well, hey, I can relate, man. Same thing here in the Layrisson clan.
So I'm praying
that's
my
a
son
cute
gets
story.
her arm.
So you guys, y'all met in what years of school was this for you?
This is right before I got in pharmacy school, and then we started dating there on throughout pharmacy school. Did the long distance thing, if you would, And then from there, when I graduated, my wife graduated undergrad, I believe, in 2013, and then she went on to get her master's in speech therapy.
Okay.
And so she graduated 13.
Such an important field, man. I have two boys that are both in speech therapy, and man, those folks
doesn't get enough credit. Yeah,
they really don't. They're kind of the best kept secret in the education world and healthcare world. They're so important to development.
Agreed. And then we, when I moved back to Ponchatoula, we continued dating for another year, and then we got engaged right there at Ruin Brew in Ponchatoula.
Oh, cool.
That's hometown as it gets, and. From there, we got married, and I would say one of the my wife being from St. Tammany, a lot of times we would go out to eat in Ponchatoula, and she would sit down and she'd say, "Do you have to say hello to every table? Just because you know people. You go to meet Patty on a Friday night, you're gonna know a few people." So she was laughing. Well, I guess that was a burden back then, and now that we have a son and we're in schools and everything else, now she's seeing just how wonderful this little community is, how everybody kind of watches out for each other, and people in the school, and it's just a great little.
For our viewers, I'll give an example of that. I think it was last week. I'm sitting here battling, and in my morning ritual, which is a battle with my two kids. They're 5 and 3, to get out of the car and into the Strawberry Castle preschool. Great school, by the way. But my young one, he's a flight risk, James, and he wants to go dart running out in cars. And, there's Chris Pugh, to grab him by the arm and say, hey, boy, get back over here to daddy. And so you're right. That's so important. And we take for granted because it's just the way Ponchatoula is.
Exactly.
But I think people are doing that all over.
The fact that you take it for granted, but then you live somewhere else and you realize that doesn't exist everywhere was maybe the aha moment that, let's go ahead and call this place home. So we love it. We've accepted it. She's grown to love it. And here we are.
And here we are. And so Brady Pugh about to be a big brother here soon. Congrats to y'all on that. Alyssa, as busy as you are, you probably don't have time to watch us bloviate here about Chris's life story. But in case you do are tuning in, thanks for letting him do this. I know there's probably some chores going undone at your house right now, so he can chat with the town. And we appreciate you. There's probably a good time to kind of circle back to some more comments here. And I don't think we did Celeste earlier. But she says, go Chris from Arkansas. You getting Isaac Zaleski, what a great guy. I know he's a great friend to you and your family. You mentioned the Starkeys earlier. That's Raymond chiming in. Thanks for watching. Miss Faye, you're one of my favorite people in all of this area. So thank you for tuning in once again. You're such a sweetheart. Larry Macaluso, boy, he's a character. We all love Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Getting more love there from your sister-in-law. And so Anyway, thank you all for making these comments. We're very grateful for them. We've been talking about Chris Pugh's background and his education in pharmacy, and we kind of got through the Walmart years, if you will. You talked about earlier the importance of this community, the kind of why you went into small business. So you mentioned your partner, you guys leave Walmart, you open Cypress Pointe Pharmacy. Tell us about this business venture. Tell us about your pharmacy, beginning with where you are. Give us the sales pitch, if you will, because I'm so excited that you're opening this new pharmacy. We're seeing now, especially in times of COVID, just how important pharmacists are. The personal relationship with a pharmacist is so important. And I would imagine that's easier to deliver in a small pharmacy like the one you have now. So tell us about it. Cypress Pointe Pharmacy, what's the deal? Tell us the story there.
So with Cypress Pointe, it was an opportunity that presented itself, and I was just happy to find the right one and hop on. So with Ponchatoula and with healthcare, I mean, changes are inevitable and things are evolving. For example, maybe when you and I were growing up, and for as long as I can remember, you mostly had one primary care physician. For me, that was Dr. Greg Allen.
Dr. Johnny Walker here. You're right.
You would go see him.
One-stop shop.
Friday night football games. He was on the sideline. He was so, accessible. You would call him. Even a little earlier on, you had doctors that made house calls. You're now starting to see maybe healthcare shift a little bit to where there's not as many primary care physician offices.
Right.
Whereas more we're opening, or you could see it, especially in Tangipahoa Parish, Southern Tangipahoa Parish, the number of urgent care is opening. I think we've had 5 open in the last 12 months. Being a pharmacist at Walmart, I've always thrived on, I'm a very prideful pharmacist is what I'd like to say. I enjoy that customer interaction. Whether I work at a big chain or somewhere else, I want you to say, that's my pharmacist and we have a personal relationship. With that being said, it does get a little difficult in big chains to manage that customer relationship and the corporate world you live in. So it was always my dream to get out in the independent pharmacy world. What I think is so special, and we've seen it, I mean, the example is right here with the COVID pandemic. You've seen the COVID vaccines be distributed to independent pharmacies. And if those weren't available, what would we do? What would we do if those pharmacies were put out of business or didn't have the clientele or the customer base? And I've been, talking with other local pharmacies, and
that's such a great point. And you're able to have that person. You mentioned the words personal relationship earlier with your patients. And it's so important. I think as you mentioned vaccine, my own parents, my dad's pushing 80. My mom's not far behind. Sorry for revealing your ages there, guys. But my point here is they don't want to call into some computer or go on some website to figure out how to get their vaccine. They need some TLC to be walked through that process. And thankfully, they use a small community pharmacy. They're able to get that. Right. I think you're hitting on something that's really important here. And maybe we take for granted on a day-to-day basis when we're just going to get a Z-Pack for, the latest sinus infection. But there's so much more to healthcare. And if we don't have the general practice doctor we had in your childhood, mine, and yesteryear, the role of the pharmacist becomes that much more important, right? Because we have to have somebody to interact with who can kind of help us navigate that system.
So speaking on that, it's kind of like, I'll give you an example. I mean, we can relate with small children. You bring your small child to, an urgent care because, they're nauseous or they're, whatever, or have a cold. So you bring them in, you're asked to fill out a little bit of paperwork. You're trying to fill it out, but keep your kid, comforted, not screaming, running all over the place. You get to the question with maybe, for example, allergies, and you just kind of, none that I can think of. So you turn in the form, you get a prescription, you go to your pharmacy. Maybe if you don't have that personal relationship, maybe they don't realize, hey, let me look into this. Maybe the kid has an allergy, or maybe that extra counseling tip doesn't occur and your kid takes the medication. Maybe they have an allergic response, and then you're dealing with a bigger problem on top of that problem. Where if you have that personalized customer care, maybe the pharmacist can be that liaison between and say, hold on, there might be an issue here. Maybe this was too strong of a dose for this small of a child, because maybe there's 3, but their weight is a little bit below where it should be. That is the part of pharmacy that I really enjoy, that community involvement. And it goes even into the price of drugs. Sometimes doctors, they don't always see the price that the insurance may cover or what they don't cover.
Right.
And as a pharmacist, maybe you can, give them some insight and say, let me call your doctor and see if we can adjust it just this small way. And, get it something that's more affordable, that's treatable, so that everyone can win. So I think
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I'm a personal injury lawyer. So I spend my days helping people that have been injured in car wrecks. And what does that mean? That means a ton of them need pharmacy, right? They have pain medications, muscle relaxers, you name it. And these are so expensive. And most of my clients don't have health insurance. And even when they do, it doesn't pick up the full tab, or there's a copay or deductible. And that's all so tough to navigate. And you're right. It's not the doctor's job to kind of know the price of what he prescribes, and it's been so helpful to my clients to have great pharmacists like you to jump in and, talk solutions and try to realize that cost is a big factor in this equation. So, man, to hear this coming from you, it's music to my ears, because I've seen it in my practice. So thanks for sharing that. What are some other aspects of small business, locally owned pharmacies that make it such a good idea?
Going back, personally, I'm a member of Kiwanis. I know you're a big member of Rotary.
But I came up in Kiwanis, man, Key Club. I'm a big admirer of your club.
But you have so many good organizations in Ponchatoula, between Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions Club, Knights of Columbus, just to name a few, JC's, Chambers very involved. Those things, but going back when we grew up playing, Little League sports, every jersey was the name of a small business. That was something, I always played for Pugh's Floors. It was something of pride. And now you go to the fields and you see the signs on the back fence, and it may sound cliche, but that's something that I really admire. And just being able to be in partners with different people in different avenues, just that small business mentality and the way you can build relationships, whether it's between Bonings or Gabriel's or, DuPont's Construction.
Speaking to them, wait, how about this? You're talking about Coach Mike DuPont, his much better half, Allison here. She says she couldn't be prouder of you. You're her third son. And speaking of mamas, the important mama has chimed in, Alyssa. That's so cool. So she's sharing here that she found out y'all were pregnant at the grand opening of your pharmacy. Tell us about that. That can't be true. Is that true?
Yeah, that is 100% true. We opened on July 27th, and my beautiful wife was helping us do inventory out front, because she was off for the summer. And she said, I'm going to go home early and make you a nice big dinner, for your grand opening. So I came home, and she had a nice little gift bag, and I was excited. And she had a little card, and I opened it up, and the day I opened, she handed me a positive pregnancy test. So, it was just like, oh, what a day.
So who knew the grand opening would be the second biggest story of the day for you?
Not what I was expecting, but we're very blessed. And we're actually having a daughter, Cecilia Elizabeth, should be here.
Oh, wow.
Anytime.
Let's hope she looks like her mother, man. And
I agree.
Grandmothers. That's neat, man. She's got good eyes. There's a lot of pretty ladies in your family on both sides there. I love that story, though. It reminds me, my wife, like yours, is one for the dramatic pregnancy reveal. So we find out that she's pregnant with our first boy, Luke, while we're on vacation in Paris, and we're on the balcony looking at the Eiffel Tower, and it was just a magical moment, right? And so 2 years later, I'm chasing Luke around. He's chasing pigeons in San Francisco at this beautiful park, the Palace of Fine Arts. And Brandy reveals then she's pregnant with baby number 2, James. And I'm like, we can't afford any more vacations, baby. It's not just the price of the trip, but we got kids, the tuition comes with it. So.
Parker, maybe you should stop taking your wife places where she can drink wine. She spoils it every time.
My wife knows you very well, Chris. She's not afraid to come hit you now. If you're Allison DuPont's third son, you're like a little brother to Brandy Layrisson. So you better watch yourself, but you're dead on right. You got some more comments coming in here. Katie Schaff Allen says, hey, Dr. Pugh.
Fellow pharmacist.
Cool. I didn't know that. And that's a neat picture. Speaking of beautiful families, she's got a beautiful family photo there on hers. And Brandon LaBeouf says, he knew the first one on accident. It's always fun telling pregnancy stories. If you got a fun story, share it in the comments below. We'll be happy to share it with our viewers.
If we hit 50 comments, Parker said his next show he's going to take them karaoke car driving.
Right. Well, I know you're you and Alyssa are such great parents. I see the way you guys raised Brady. Y'all are doing a great job with that. So that's a lucky little girl y'all have on the way. And thanks for sharing that story with us. We're nearing the end here. I've kept you longer than I promised, so I don't want to take up your whole evening. We want to let you get back to your family. But before we do that, what else would you like to share with our viewers, with our community? Is there anything else on your mind or your heart that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I just, as far as Cypress Pointe Pharmacy, we would just like the opportunity. I do have to just give a couple of thank yous, to be honest.
Sure.
Our lead technician, Raylan Dempster, is phenomenal. When we first opened up, I'm sure many small businesses can relate. Anytime you do a software change, it can involve tremendous headaches. And she's taken that on, showed me tips and tricks throughout the process. But she's fantastic. I can't thank her enough. And Donnie Williams, our other pharmacist there, has been like a mentor to me. Trey Landry, also like a mentor to me over time. And I appreciate all the time and effort they
Sounds like y'all have a great team.
Yes, absolutely. I could not be more blessed with the team. I mean, I think, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And
sure.
We're very blessed with the team we have established there. As far as just small business, I just, just the networking of the small businesses in Ponchatoula is just amazing. The support you have, I find, and I know I talked a lot about Ponchatoula today, but that's home to me, something that's dear to my heart. But in small towns, sometimes tragedy can make that little community wrap their arms around you, whether you're a child or a grown man, and that's happened to me on countless occasions. So I can't thank the people of Ponchatoula enough, friends, family, everybody in between. And we're very active in our faith, and that's one reason to break out on your own. Now that I have a family, I was working every other weekend, and for a while, my wife and I got used to that. And then all of a sudden, Brady comes along, and he's a year old, and it wasn't bad. And then when he got to be 2, and I found I was missing out on a few things.
Sure. Once he can start telling you about it, right?
Right. Once that and rushing out of church so I can make sure I get to work on time was something that I just felt was more important to make those moments. So we're happy and extremely blessed to go in this adventure and this journey. And I thank everyone that supported us along the way. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop by, whether it's, you have a son or daughter or a young high school student thinking about pharmacy. I'd love to talk to you. Or if you have any questions, we accept all insurance companies, despite the name. You don't have to be a patient of Cypress Pointe to use this. We're open to the public.
So tell us about that. Tell us where you're located on the Cypress Pointe campus and
how
all that works.
Cypress Pointe Hospital just built a brand new medical arts facility located directly behind Cypress Pointe Hospital. Right there on Dr. John Lambert Drive. They have a new apartment complex as well, the Heights. So it's right off the Airport Road exit, south on the Airport Road. So we have a urgent care located behind us, and a couple other buildings are going in right now, including a physical therapy wing, maybe a chiropractic clinic. So stop on by, just either to say hi or just if you have any questions, if you need any medications transferred or looked into, we'll be happy to talk to you. So, and Parker, I really appreciate you having me on today.
Well, thanks for doing this. It's so fun to get somebody on here that I genuinely respect and look up to. I know it sounds weird coming from an older guy with gray beard, but I really mean that. I've seen you step up for your family and your friends, and you're just a great guy. And all of us that know you, feel that way. So if you're watching this show and you don't know Chris Pugh, get to know him, take him up on his offer to stop in and talk to him. Go use him as your pharmacist, because the cool thing about hiring a brilliant young pharmacist like Chris is he's going to be with you for the long haul. Right. So go ahead, start that relationship now. As you heard, he's got a lot of tuition to pay. So that guy's going to be working for decades to come to put those folks through school. And, go give those guys a chance. You will not regret it. It's a first-class operation. It's a first-class team. It's not. I'm so glad to hear Chris say it's not all about him. He's not the only great professional in that office, but give him a shot. So, Chris, thank you for your time. To you and all your family, thank you so much for sharing Chris with us today. To all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Oh, we have a few more. Oh, I see them coming in. Last-minute comments. I got to get you guys on the board here. So, hold on a second here. Derek Wheat, I think you're the first one. We got some congrats there. I'm going to kind of go through lightning round this time. But
I see you, Chelsea.
so great to see you guys comment, and thank y'all so much. And, just like Miss Allison says here, we're proud of you, Chris, Alyssa. You guys are a great family. It's so wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for the time. And to everyone else, we'll be back here next week. Tune in 5 o'clock on Thursdays, Ponchatoula Live.